Are you excited, Norman? Are you excited?
Good morning. Today me and Norman are going to take you for a walk down the canal. Okay, so we're at the canal near Adlington. It's September, UK, and we're going to see what we can find on our walk this morning. Well, this is my first ever full format long YouTube video. Right, first thing I found is a scourge of people's gardens, but it's actually a wild plant. It's a black bramble if it's a weed, and it's a black currant if it's in your garden. Now, if you put it along like that, all them auxiliary shoots will grow, and this is last year's. It's got blackberries on it, and Norman loves them. Here, Norman, let's go. Norman. This is something interesting. Now, this was obviously a towpath, so the horses used to walk on here, pulling all the coal barges down, and it actually was worn, the rope was worn all the stone away. You can imagine a rope that's covered in sand. It's like a chainsaw. So somebody's replaced this, probably very early in the century, with very, very hard, like I don't know if it's an Accrington brick, but it's a very, very hard brick. And it's even sawn the industrial brick with the ropes. So that's a sign. If you see that, you can see that I think they used to have a roller on originally, but they all got worn away as well. So this is how they used to pull the barges. It's called Himalayan balsam. It's noticeable by these little pods that when you touch them, when they're ripe, they explode. And it came from the Himalayas. Apparently, people use these in curries. It's quite a spicy fruit. It's related to busy lizzie. It was imported as a ornamental plant. It is a beautiful plant, I'm not saying it isn't. But it is now taking over all the natural countryside. Now, people have been in here and they've tried to flatten it because that's what you've not to let it do, go to seed. Because once it goes to seed, them's all next year's seeds. You've got to stop it from flowering. So what I've been coming down with a stick and doing balsam bashing, we're encouraging everybody to do the same. It's got no natural predators. So what it's doing is taking over all the area. It's stopping all the natural flora and fauna from growing. The bees can love it, but they only love it when it's in flower. And the problem is, when this is in flower, it flowers for a short period, but it stopped all the other plants that flower before and after it from growing. Its other name's policeman's helmet. It looks like an orchid. It's beautiful, I'm not saying it isn't. It is also edible. Interesting fact. Oh, this is a good one. It's called broadleaf plantain. Now the young seeds on this at first taste like grass, but when you start chewing it, you'll not have taste mushrooms as strong. So you can use these seeds, you can dry them and you can put them in your stews. And instead, if you've no mushrooms, you can just put that into soups and broth, and it just tastes like mushroom. Now, the other thing about this plant, this is the broadleaf one, there's also a narrowleaf one. You can crunch up get it all crunched up. It's getting to autumn now, it's coming to the end, but when they're nice and juicy, you get like a younger leaf. You get like a green sap coming out of it. Now you can use that as a poultice if you get a bite or a sting. It's got antihistamine, antibiotic, anti something else. You can't beat it. It's an absolute brilliant. You say rub dock leaves on your on your bites and stings, nettle stings. You shouldn't, you should be using broad or narrow leaf plantain. If I find the narrow leaf in a bit, I'll show you that as well. Hello, I found this one. This is Alchemilia mollis. Can you see the little beads of water on it? It's called lady's mantle. And apparently if you wash your face in this in the morning, you'll keep young and beautiful all your life. Now what this is, it's a thing called guttation. And it grows next to water. And to get rid of surplus water, it pumps it up through the leaf and squirts it onto the top of the foliage, and then you get this like silver beads everywhere. It's called Alchemilia, and I think it was something to do with alchemy because it looks like silver. Interesting fact. Right, now this is a scourge of people's gardens. It's called bindweed. It's a terrible thing to have in your garden, but it's a beautiful plant in nature. And that's just starting to flower now in August, September in the UK. And then this is the next thing to flower. This is a adult ivy. You can see the leaves are a different shape to normal ivy. And when it gets to a certain age, ivy, it changes into this. And it has all these little, like I call them golf ball flowers. They are the last form of pollen for any late butterflies, bees, overflies. So it's an absolute brilliant thing to have in nature. So although these two can be classed as pests in the garden, they're absolutely brilliant down the canal bank. The amount of different plants growing down the side of the canal, it's just like a corridor of wild species. It's an absolute, the biodiversity is absolutely brilliant. And I walk down this canal and there's things like crocosmia, which has escaped out of somebody's garden, nettles. It's a corridor of wild plants. It's an absolute gift to the UK. This is one. This is floating pennyweed. Now what somebody's done, can you see that's what it looks like? It can grow 25 centimetres a day. It was imported as a garden plant for a pond in the 80s, 90s. The ecologist who I met from the Canal and Riverside Trust was telling me this is the one plant that keeps them awake because it grows that much a day. It floats, that's why it's called floating pennywort. And what somebody's done with this mat is they've pulled it out and they've thrown it upside down to let it dry in the sun, and that's the best way of getting rid of it. So if you ever see any and you get a chance to pull it out without drowning, don't let floating pennywort take over because it's just going to choke the canals. Look at that. Nature finds a way. There's an alder and an oak growing in the cracks. Hypericum, hart's tongue ferns, and I've just noticed on the bridge behind you there's lots of hart's tongue ferns and a willow tree. There you go, bindweed again, using a fence. Hello Norman, where have you been? Nowhere, the Victorians built this bridge. It's all faced stone. It's got this ornate curve going round the back here. All the stones all been ornately made. And who's ever going to see it? It backs onto a wood in the middle of nowhere. If that was in the middle of London, you could imagine them spending the money on it. But they spent the money on every single thing they did. We'll never go back to the days of the Victorians. They had class. Look at Norman, he's laughing all the time. It makes you happy because he's so happy. Look at him. Norman, no, go. Here we go. Right, this is what you want to be looking for. If you find any, might have been walked on, but if you find any acorns on the ground, you can pick them up and you can grow acorns from them. You put them in water first. If they sink, then you know they're good. And then just put it in soil, put it in a plant pot, put it in the garden. It does need a period of cold, about 5 weeks of cold, and then it should start growing. But you can grow your own oak tree from an acorn, but you're better to find them when they've fallen off, then you know they're ripe. Look at this. This is a very old ivy growing up a very old oak tree. Now, sometimes when the reason that oak trees drop the leaves is so that the wind can't blow them over. But when you've got it full of ivy like this, sometimes they can actually bring the tree down. But I think this tree's tough enough to put up with it. But it's nature's way. Because when this comes down, there's all these little seedlings here waiting to fill the gap. So it's how it happens. This is one of Norman's favourite plants. In your garden, it's not very good. It's very hard to get rid of. But it's been around since the Jurassic. So dinosaurs used to eat this. Apparently you can make tea out of the fronds. You can wash your hair in it. It's supposed to have lots of uses. It's not poisonous. But Norman just thinks it's brilliant. Norman the Destroyer loves to rip it to pieces. Shake it like a rat, Norman, go on. Hello, right, this is that other one. Now this is narrowleaf plantain, and this is the one where if you crunch it up and get all the juices out of it, you see there's more juice in this one. It's the wrong time of year really, but that, if you have a bite or a sting, you put it on or rub it on, and it's better than anything. Now, on my channel, I had somebody say that in America they call it white man's footprint, because when the settlers came across from Europe, they brought this as a herb because you can eat every part of it. You can eat the leaves as a salad, you can eat the roots. The buds, when they're young, it tastes like mushrooms, they're edible. It's antibiotic, antiseptic, and what's the other thing? Antihistamine as well. So absolutely brilliant plant. But the reason, when the settlers brought it over, they planted it round their settlements, and so there's a circle all the way around of this plant growing in America, and that's why it's called white man's footprint, because everywhere they landed there's a circle of this. Right, the whole of the woodland, the biggest organism in the woodland is a Mycelium, and it's basically, it looks like spider's webs that goes completely through all the wood. They absorb and eat all the nutrients, and this, the mushroom, is a flower of the Mycelium. Now what's great about Mycelium is that they can get nutrients out of the soil that the tree can't, but they can't make their own sugar because they don't photosynthesize. So they actually have they connect with the roots of the trees, and they can actually swap sugar for nutrients with the tree, and trees can actually send food to their other trees, to their babies. So the whole network, like Avatar, is covered in Mycelium. Look at this, this is elderberry, and you can see as the wind's blown it, it's been twisting, and these two branches have died. Now, very common in elderberry, you get this. Now what that is, it's called ears of the wood. Now because it's been hot and dry, they've gone a bit crispy, but you can pick them and soak them in water, and when you have a Chinese meal, you get that mushrooms that you find in this, like a slimy one that you find in Chinese restaurants. Well, what happens about it, this is the same family as this one, ears of the wood. And what they do, when you rehydrate them in your soups or anything, they absorb all the flavours, so it makes them really tasty. So, but they tend to grow mainly on dead elderberries. But I just love the way that spiralled. This is my favourite bridge. Somebody, again, who took the time to build it in a spiral going over Look at the colours, it's absolutely amazing. And it's a railway bridge in the middle of nowhere. Think of all the little short stones, all different sizes to it. So look at that, absolute work of art. Love it. You can tell how old this bridge is. These are the start of a stalactite. In fact, if you look above your head, we have got stalactites. That's the minerals out the stone washing down in the drips of water, and you're getting stalactites in a bridge. Right, we're going into the darkest woodlands of Chorley and in the undergrowth. See what we can find down here. Norman loves it. Doesn't you, Norman? Hey? No, this is when he comes into Norman the Destroyer. This is an old oak tree that's fallen down. Look at all the bracket fungus that's living inside of it. And again, like I said before with fungus, this is reducing the wood back down to nutrients. And these are equivalent of flowers. But it's some kind of fungus. I think it could be a polypore, but I'm not a fungus expert. Oh, look what I found! Growing out of this old log, dead man's fingers. They look like somebody's buried a man and there's dead fingers coming through the ground. Look at that! Gruesome! Ooh, love it! Not edible though. Come on, Aquadog! Come on! Come on, Aquadog! You love going at river, don't you? Look at this, where this river has cut through this hillside here, and I'm sure that this shale at the bottom is probably going back as far back as the Jurassic period, because Wigan is very famous for coal, and you get coal in the Jurassic era, I think, or around that time, so you get a lot of fossils in these layers. But look at that, that's a slice through time. And for some reason you always find oak trees and beech trees always want to perch on the edge. I don't know why. Come on Norman, let's get in this water. Find a stick. Yeah, Norman. With the sound of music. You know, we've got the Australian tree ferns. See what I found here? I found ferns that are that old. They're making little tree ferns, but it's not a tree fern, it's a normal British fern, but they've got trunks like mini tree ferns. Oh. Don't stand in the water.
Oh no.
You could understand why the pagans thought that holly and ivy and mistletoe was magic. All the other leaves are going brown and dropping off, and they're looking even shinier than ever. So that's why yew trees, hollies and ivy, you'll always find in a pagan, because they used to worship them, and then they used to plant them in the favourite worship spots, and then it just happens that they're now at Christmas. In fact, there's an heron in the field looking for frogs. So thank you for coming on the walk with me and Norman. Interesting fact.